Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. I wanted to continue with the Trump executive order series, and with all the action on the Muslim ban executive order, one of the executive orders, which was essentially entitled Internal Security, which I've done videos on as well, has some very troubling provisions in there, which I am certain the lawsuits will start, being prepared and submitted once there are people who are actually being placed under those provisions. But I wanted to just concentrate on this video on exactly one little part of this particular executive order and why it is so critical that you're aware of essentially the unconstitutionality of it and why it is critically necessary in order to determine when you have to go to court and why. So basically, in the United States, there's since the beginning it has been very, very important that someone is innocent until proven guilty. Okay, that is essentially the backbone of our criminal justice system. Now, as everybody knows, there's lots of things that could be improved and so forth. But if someone were guilty until proven innocent, the whole balance of the criminal justice system would be off. Okay. And we in the United States would end up being like countries around the world where criminal trials are just a joke, where the person is already guilty, where there's more than a 99% chance that if you're brought into criminal court you will be found guilty, and so forth. There's no protections for the criminal defendant. Now, obviously, if somebody did a crime and they are convicted, they're guilty and they should be punished accordingly. But if they are not guilty and there is no conviction, then they are presumed innocent. Now, the executive order on internal security essentially takes away that particular ideology of the U.S. Constitution and essentially makes it, in the circumstances as listed in the executive order, that they are guilty until proven innocent. And it even goes further than that, that where there is not sufficient evidence to even charge somebody, let alone get a conviction, that they are guilty and that they need to be removed from the United States. Now, this is a far cry from uh, trying to protect the American people from immigrants, and it is essentially showing that, or trying to show that, with an executive order, that the Constitution can just be wiped away with all of its history, all of its protections. And that's why I'm certain that these provisions will either not come to fruition, or there'll be cases that go all the way up to the Supreme Court to strike them from the executive order. So let me, with that intro, let me just give you where we're talking about here. So essentially, it starts off with, and there's three different categories of when somebody should be removed. Okay, the first one is when someone commits any crime. Okay, and clearly this is overbroad. It doesn't comport with the Immigration and Nationality Act. It doesn't comport with the grounds which make someone deportable or inadmissible, and it ignores all of the case law, statutes, and prior regulations which have been made to date. And an executive order cannot just make all of that disappear. Okay, meaning, and I give you an example: if somebody goes into a 7-Eleven and steals a pack of gum, okay, versus somebody who goes and kills somebody, which one obviously should be put in removal proceedings and is deemed to be inadmissible? Well, clearly, or deportable, clearly the one who committed the murder. And so the question is whether the person who stole a pack of gum should be put in that same category and is inadmissible and deportable. So you can't just say any crime. There needs to be a delineation, as there already is. Okay. I mean, I'm getting some comments from people who essentially think the same thing, that if there's any crime that's committed, no matter what, by somebody who is not a citizen of the United States, they should be deported. And that's not how the law works. The law, if you look at the Immigration and Nationality Act on what makes someone deportable, and for example, also what's considered an aggravated felon, crime of moral turpitude, and so forth. It's listed in quite a lot of detail as to the specificity of when someone becomes deportable and under what circumstances and under what types of crimes. If Congress wanted to make it so that every foreign national who came into the United States would be immediately removed upon the issuance of any crime, they wouldn't have spent all of the time making the Immigration and Nationality Act delineating what makes somebody removable. So, as I had stated in my prior video on the balance of powers and the checks and balances, this clearly falls under the congressional authority to make laws. So you can't use an executive order to make laws or to completely disregard the laws which have already been made by Congress, which is the legislative branch. Okay, so that's the first item. Now, the second item, which is considerably more troubling, and as we go on with this video and the three different items, each item in turn is more troubling than the item before. So the second item in the executive order essentially says if someone's been charged with a crime but has not yet been convicted, they need to be removed. Now, this just smacks of guilty until proven innocent. I mean, how many people have been charged with various allegations, have gone to court, trial, or had it dismissed because there wasn't sufficient evidence, they won the trial, and so forth. So, what Trump is doing here is he is making it so that any foreign national that is charged, and that means not convicted, but just charged, they should be removed. Now, how does this work? I mean, just the execution of it is mind-boggling. How it would happen? How does this happen? If somebody gets charged, does immigration run into the courtroom and take these people, put them in removal proceedings, and then remove them prior to when their criminal trial may be done? If they've been charged but the case has been dismissed, likewise, are they taken into immigration detention and deported, even though they have no actual conviction, but only a charge which either they beat or there was insufficient evidence, whatever happens to be the case? Um, so that's the second item. The third item, which is again even more troubling, and it is I honestly I have no idea how this would be put into action, is if somebody supposedly commits the elements of a crime but they don't have a charge, they've never been charged, and clearly they never have a conviction because they've never been charged, those people also are to be removed. So it's just You just can't even put into words how something like that, number one, got into an executive order, and then how it is supposed to be effectuated by the people. So, how does this work? Does this mean that if a policeman happens to see somebody who might have stole something but just doesn't bring any charges because there's not any evidence, decide to call immigration, who then puts the person in removal proceedings and then tries to deport them? So one of the reasons I'm going into all of these items in this particular executive order is to show that, honestly, I don't believe that when the executive order was drafted that there was any consultations with attorneys as to the effects, and certainly not immigration attorneys. But if I want you to take heart that, if you're afraid that if any of this is going to hit you, make sure that, you obviously get an immigration attorney, and then, we can bring the necessary lawsuits in regards to the unconstitutionality of these provisions of the executive order. We can bring it to the district court, who hopefully would rule that they are non-enforceable for being vague, ambiguous, unconstitutional, violation of rights, and so forth. And obviously, if the district court denies, it can go up to appeal, and so forth. So that's how the whole system works. So you don't need to lose sleep over the executive orders. When the time comes, the lawsuits will be brought. The judges will make the rulings, and then it either will or won't go up on appeal. Okay, if you like the video, click like, subscribe. More on the coming videos.